Hi, Diane Ringel here. I'm coming to you today with a cute little project. Let's see if I can show it to you. It's a beaded brooch. Now this uses my enamel cab, um, and let's see, some Czech and Miyuki seed beads. I think it's a really cool little project. It uses a pin back that's a starburst design, but when you add the seed beads in there, it just looks so otherworldly. I just think it's the coolest thing. These come together really quick, so they're nice for gifts, and I do sell the kits on my website. But the tutorial will let you, substitute whatever beads you have on hand. You need some short, flat little beads. These are Czech O beads. You'll need some cube beads, and you have to use cubes that are between 3 and 4 millimeter. If you get bigger than 4 millimeter, they start to bunch up and not look too good. So anyway, that's it. Just a few more things about these beads. The seed beads, I carried some of these around in my purse for a while because I was going to do a tutorial for the Baltimore Bead Society. And the little seed beads, a lot of them did not survive the journey. So you can't treat these like keys, you have to treat them like jewelry. So once you have this done, make sure you take care of it, put it in a decent box when you're putting it away, and don't have it on a coat that's going to get banged around or you will start missing beads. Anyway, this is the project. Stay tuned. Okay, I'm going to show you the contents of the kit. The kit comes in either a regular cab version or a rivet option. So this is what you get with the rivet option. This is the 25 millimeter enamel cab plus the little rivet part. This is just a standard 25 millimeter cab. It also comes with the pin back. You can see the finding there. It's 42 millimeter. These are Czech O beads. These are Miyuki cube beads in 4 millimeter. These are demis in, I believe it's a 6 or an 8, either one will work. And these are little round 15s. The other things you'll need are a beading needle. I'm using tulip number 11s. You will need fireline thread. I'm using 8-pound in the smoky, but you can use whatever you have that's nice and strong. You'll need E6000 glue if you're not doing the rivet option. So these things come either pre-riveted, which is not shown, or doing the rivet yourself, which is this one, or just a plain. If you're not doing a rivet, you'll need the E6000 glue. That's it. We're about to get started. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is thread our needle with some E6000. I'm going to do what I call a half wingspan and then some. What I do is take the end of the thread and hold it up to my left shoulder, and I run the reel out till I come to the end of my fingertips. It's probably a yard or so of string. So I've cut the thread and I'm going to thread the needle. Now this thread is round and the needle eye is very thin, so what I do is run the edge of that thread like curling ribbon against the edge of my scissors. That flattens out the thread some and makes it much easier to thread the needle. So I'm going to thread it. We'll see if I can do this without having to turn the camera off and start over. There we go. That was a miracle. Okay, so we're going to take our lace edge bezel and our threaded needle, and we're going to go through one of the holes. Pull that through till we come to the end. We're going to leave a couple inches of end there. Oops, almost went too far. Nope, I did. Well, okay, here we go. What I'm going to do is tie a knot on here and leave a little bit of that thread. So I've gone through once, I'll go through twice, get that knot on there, And now our thread is anchored on the lace bezel. And okay, so to start, we're going to pick up one of the O beads. We're going to pick up a 4mm cube, one of the demis, and a little 15, and pull the thread through. Okay, now we're going to go back through, but we're going to skip that last 15 that we put on there because that's our stop bead. So we're going to go down through the demi, the cube, and the O, and right back down through the lace bezel, coming back in the same hole we went out. Pull it nice and tight. And now we're going to go out the next loop in the frame. Now what I like to do on these is do a little anchor knot. So I've gone through once, I've put my needle part way through, and I'm going to wrap around the needle twice. Then I'm going to pull that thread back so it's nice and tight around the needle. And I'm going to hold that thread with my thumb here. I've got my thumb over that thread, and now I'm going to pull the needle through. And now that's making a really nice tight little knot right up on the bezel frame. And what that does is keeps the thread nice and taut around this section. I find if you don't do this little knot in every one, these tend to hang really loosely. I don't know if you remember those little puppets that used to have a base, and you would push up the base and their little legs would fall down. Well, if you don't get that knot in there to tighten this up, these become very loose and wobbly, and I just don't like the look. So I've started adding that knot on there to keep it nice and tight. So now I'm going to repeat that, getting an O, a cube, a demi, and a 15. Push them all the way down. Skip that first 15 because that's our stop bead. If you forget to skip that, when you pull the thread through, all your little beads are going to fall right off. So there's our second one, nice and tight. I'm going to go through here once. Oops. Put the needle part way through. Wrap it once, twice. Hold that nice and tight with my thumb as I pull this through. Sometimes you'll see that little knot has come up a little bit. So I'm going to pull this thread down again to tighten that up. It's kind of like doing a French knot in embroidery where you have to keep that knot nice and tight down against the fabric to keep it nice and clean looking. So there's our knots on there. And we'll pick up another set. These are really easy to do. They're a very simple project, but they look really nice when they're done. So they're a great gift to give to friends because they look really cool. There's our next one. Now if you didn't buy a kit, it's really easy to substitute things and make this project. Of course, you need the finding and the lace bezel, but bead-wise, you can use any flat round bead like this. You can use a cube in anywhere from like 2.5 to 4 is about the maximum. If you get over 4 millimeters, this whole frame starts to get too tight with beads packed, and then they don't lay nice and flat. But you could use a round bead, anything that's 4 millimeter or less instead of these cubes, and any thin little bead. The thing with this, if you're using this pin back, you don't want to have your bead stack be too tall, otherwise these nice little sun rays won't show. But you can substitute any beads here, especially like this little end bead. You could go a size bigger or whatever you wanted to do with that. But you can play around with these and change up the bead combinations. It's such a simple thing to do. We'll do another one here. Go around twice. Hold it down. Oops. Stab myself. Again, that little knot didn't sit real tight, but I'm just wiggling the thread to get that back down. You want to make sure that knot is right next to the frame. This is really all there is to it, going all the way around the frame with that simple little stack and knot. You can see how nice that's looking. Sometimes these cube beads have a side that's a little wonky. These actually look pretty nice, but sometimes you'll have an edge that's nice and square and one that's a little not so square. What you want to do is pick it up on the edge that's square, and that way it's pointed the right direction. I find if you have one that's kind of wonky and you put the wonky end on this side, then the bead doesn't point the right direction. It just works out nicer if you have any wonky beads to pick it up on the nice end and let the bead that has the stop bead on the end of it be the other wonky direction. Alright, so I'm going to finish this and I'll meet you when I've gotten all the way around. Okay, I'm back and I'm very close to the end. I just have one more piece to do. So I'm going through the lace bezel, coming up through again, and doing the little knot. Pulling the thread through, getting one last stack. Going back through, skipping that little stop bead. Okay, that's the last one. Now what I'm going to do is tie off using the thread that's the needle is on and the tail end. I'm just going to tie a little square knot there. And that's all there is to that. When I cut these off, I'm going to leave a little bit of tail. And then I'm going to take a little E6000 and I'm going to glue those tails down. Ooh, my cap is absolutely stuck. There's no way I'm getting that off. Okay. Got a little E6000 out of the hole there. And I'm just going to glue that down. This is kind of smelly stuff. If you are allergic or react to this stuff, you can wear a mask, but that's all I'm going to do right there. So my tails are glued down and I'm going to let that dry and then we'll come back and do the rivet. Okay, if you bought the kit that required the riveting portion of this tutorial, this is the stuff you will need. This is just a regular business card, just plain old. You'll see what that's used for in a minute. A little awl for poking a hole in the business card. Same for the thumbtack. You just need something to poke a hole in the card. So first thing we're going to do is start the hole with a thumbtack. And then we're going to make the hole a little bigger with the awl. You don't really need these tools, just anything to get a little hole put in a business card. Okay, next thing we're going to do is put together the washer stack. Okay, so you've got the little tiny screw, you're going to put it through the little disc, and then you're going to decide which color of the little dotty washers you want to be on the outside. There's a silver and there's a bronze. I like the silver. So I'm going to put the silver on first. And you may or may not have a second washer in your kit for riveting. If the whole of your piece is really small, then you won't have two colors to choose from. You'll just have a dotty washer, just one of them. So you put that over the hole where it goes and flip that over. And if you have a big hole like this piece has, you need something to lock it in place. So you're going to use that second washer on the inside. Put that on, then you take the little nut, put it on the screw, tighten it down. And normally I would have a little Phillips head screwdriver to tighten it down, but it's not really necessary. Just hand tighten it. There's that. Now this is what the business card's for. You need to cut off that bolt so that that whole thing isn't hanging out. So you put the business card on there where that hole is. Push through. Then you're going to take your flush cutters and push down on that business card till you get to the very end. Just push down really hard because you just need a little bit of metal left. The thickness of that business card. The other thing is when you're cutting that off, see how the flush cutters have this little V angle to them? When you cut that, it's going to shoot that bolt in this direction, like up. So you really want to aim that down like this when you cut it so it doesn't shoot up in your face or shoot across the room. But to get it on camera, I just covered the end of it with my finger to keep it from shooting me in the face. That's a bad thing. Alright, so now what you're left with is just a little bit of metal at the top of that bolt. And what we want to do is take a hammer and spread that metal out so that little nut won't come off. And I'm going to use a bench vise and a nail set to do that. And I can't get that on camera here, so I have to pause and change my camera setup, and we'll do that. Okay, so this is what I have for the riveting portion. What I have here is a bench vise that attaches to the table. And in the vise is a nail set. This is just a regular from the hardware store. When you nail on trim and you have to push the nail head down under the layer of the wood, you use one of these. You put this little tip part on top of the nail head and then pound to set the nail. But I use it for riveting. And what I do here is, this is essentially glass on copper. And so pounding on it with a hammer is going to cause it to break. So what you want to do when you're riveting these enamel pieces is put the stress on the metal. So what I do here is I put that nail, the little screw head, right inside the nail set and balance it on there. Now when I'm pounding on here, I'm pounding on the screw. I'm pounding on this, and the head of this screw is taking all the pressure because it's inside this pin here. So that is the trick to not breaking your glass that's on that metal. So what I have here is a little riveting hammer. It's a Weber's. It's nice and small. I like this because it's lightweight. It doesn't put a lot of stress on my wrists or anything. But you can use any hammer you have. The key thing to this though is not taking big huge whacks with your hammer. You're lightly tapping. So I'm just tapping on here, and what I'm doing is spreading out that metal a little bit. And you want to have a good aim. You can't be smacking the glass and not expect it to break. So I'm hitting just on the end of that screw, and I'm turning it as I do, and I'm kind of creating like a little mushroom cap of metal over the end of the nut that's on there. And the goal is to spread the metal out enough that that little nut is not going to unwind and have your rivet come off. So I'm just turning this around and hitting it from different sides. Just taking little taps, making sure I'm hitting the screw and the nut, not the enamel piece. I gotta say, sometimes you'll wind up with a nail set that's really too big for the screw, and it will hit that glass washer and break. So you have to be careful that you're using the right size nail set for your screw. But I also sell these where they're pre-riveted, so you can have the cool little gear stack, but you don't have to do the rivet. But you know, hey, if it was me buying a little kit, I would want to do this myself because I just think it's fun. All right, so I've spread it out with the rivet hammer. Oh, this camera, not even in the center anymore. Sorry about that. Okay, so that's better. All right, I'm recentering on the screw, and now I'm switching hammers. This one has a planishing edge to it. You know, you can finish the rivet with just the riveting hammer, but I like to move on to the planishing hammer. Again, this is a nice light little Wubbers hammer. I just start smacking that. Normally, I work at a real workbench, and this is just a plastic table up here. So, it's not really making the rivet as easily as it is at my workbench, because this whole thing is bouncing around, and so I'm not getting the pressure I normally would. But let's see if I can get this on camera so you can see how that metal has spread out. That's not focusing very well, is it? Let me see if I can move this out of the way. Focus in on that. You can see it's starting to spread, but honestly, it's kind of hard to see, isn't it? When you're done with your rivet, the edge will be very smooth, or at least spread out. Yeah, you can see where it's spread out a little bit. What you can do is take a screwdriver and try to undo this, not with a lot of force, but with a little, and see if it stops. If it doesn't stop and the nut comes off the back, then you haven't gotten a good rivet on it. But I'm going to keep going on this a little bit because I don't think it's quite ready. See if I can get this on camera. This is a very awkward setup for filming. And if you don't want to deal with the rivet, you can just buy a pre-riveted set or just the plain cab that doesn't have the washer stack on it. But I really like the way the stacks look. Can I focus on that? I'm trying. You can see how it's spread out. Okay, I'm going to go back to my regular setup. Okay, so what we have here is the enamel cab here that has the rivet already done on it. And to attach that to the lace bezel, we're just going to use E6000. See how I took my cool cap off of the E6000? Alright, so you're going to squish out some E6000 and just use a little piece of paper to scoop up some glue, because you want to get it on the cab and not all over the edges. Want to keep it in the center. Hopefully I have just the right amount of glue and it won't squish out through the top. So I've put the glue inside the cab, and now I'm just going to put it inside the lace bezel and push down. Now hopefully I won't get a squish of glue out that rivet stack. Yeah, perfect. So that's all there is to it. That's glued in there now. And now to attach it to the pin back, oops, that's not supposed to be stuck in there. Same deal. I'm going to squish out some E6000. Hopefully you have one with an actual cap on it that works. But hey, whatever works. Now I'm going to put some glue inside that bezel frame. And the lace bezel is not going to sit flat on these pin backs. It's just slightly larger. So you're going to need a good bit of glue in there to make contact. So what I do is I make sure there's a good amount of glue in the center, and I don't push it all the way out to the edges, but when I put the cab on there and press down, it's going to smush that glue out a bit. So I'm just putting that on there. And now you can feel around and move this around, and you can tell when that lace bezel is set inside the cab of the pin back. It doesn't move around a whole lot, so that's attached nicely. If you have a certain area, you know, you can move this, spin this around so you get the rivet stack to be where you want it. I wanted it kind of right about there. Let's see. Is that set inside there? Seems off center. There. So you can see which way is up on the pin back. This is up. So that's all there is to it. It's glued down and project is done. Real fun, quick little project if you want to make gifts, and they look so cool. I love the little starburst things when they pop out the side. I just think that's really cool. You know, when I started to use these with just the enamel, it just didn't have the cool look that adding the beadwork does. So that's it for the project. Catch you another time. Bye-bye.